Been There says, I've been doing a lot of therapy for over 20 years. I don't know what they're doing except charging me a lot of money. So I think a lot of people feel the same way. And it's hard. I mean, it's one of those things. Finding a good professional in any field is a lot of trial and error. And it's like finding a good realtor, finding a good, massage therapist, finding a good whatever. The danger with a bad therapist or an ineffective therapist is that nobody, and I feel like this should be said because people really walk into a therapy session assuming that the therapist is right and that they have absolute knowledge and that if we don't get the insights that we want or that we need, that it's our fault. That we just have all of this stuff to work through. And it might be that therapist. It might be our rapport with that therapist. There could be a lot of things going on in that dynamic. So if you don't feel like you're getting a lot of forward momentum in therapy, I would encourage you to find a different therapist. And it's one of those things, like word of mouth is oftentimes kind of the best way to do it. But yes, that's well said. Cecilia says a good patient therapist relationship is a collaboration. It for sure is. And and again, like different people resonate with different people. And finding somebody that you really resonate with, it can take some doing. So, and don't be afraid to, to kind of interview them ahead of time and ask, what is your training? How long have you been doing this? What kind of therapy do you do? Are you familiar with narcissistic victim syndrome, it's also called narcissistic abuse? And if they say yes, I would ask them, what does that mean to you? And see if they're really familiar with it. And to ask what kind of treatment do they offer? Ask if they're familiar with CPTSD. Ask, I mean, it's okay to interview them. Like we would interview anybody else, right? And you're letting this person into your head. So, it's, I was talking last night in the live stream on Facebook. One of my recent insights is I have a lot of unresolved anger at therapists. And it's not fair because they, the issues that I have aren't from the therapists that I know, but my God, talk about triggering. I get so I get incredibly defensive and just really, really angry when I'm even around a lot of therapists, and it bothers me that I have that. I didn't realize what that was for like the longest time, and why I felt that way, why I felt so tense and angry and defensive. And kind of reading these different books for book club, I was like, oh my gosh, like there's a reason that I'm feeling that way. And kind of going back and being like, I have had just some really, I think, really well-intended people, and a few that were not, frankly, but that just didn't, that I feel like did a lot of damage, and to me and to my family, and it upsets me, and I think there's a lot of people out there that have gone through that. Yes. Okay, that's a great example. Been There says, Dana, I have anger at mental health professionals. A group sided with my covert narcissist ex after he has abused me and accused me of lying. I'm sorry. Yes, it's that kind of stuff because a lot of therapists really aren't familiar with abuse, which is wild. So Cecilia says, I had a therapist that openly mocked my concerns. So much of healing. So when I was taking notes today about my thoughts on the different stages of healing from all of this. A lot of people feel very re-victimized, and it's not that's not uncommon. And I think too it's important because every therapist has their own personality, their own biases, their own issues that they haven't most likely worked through, that they're bringing to the table. If a person, especially if they're in trauma, I think it's really important that professionals meet people where they are and kind of do some like digging around to really see, and then slowly stair step them towards healing. But that's really hard to do because every person, so that was one of my aha moments when I was kind of mapping out the different stages of healing, is that there's different stages depending on how the relationship ended. Because what happens is, and we had this happen in the group a few weeks ago, a gal came in, she'd been in a long-term marriage with a narcissist who was very abusive. She was watching my videos and she got it. And she was like, oh my God, like this is what I've been going through. I get it. And boom, like she was done. She just needed that validation of what she was experiencing was a problem. And then when she joined the support group, she realized, oh my gosh, there's people of all different stages of understanding and healing in here. And she couldn't understand why people were staying. And this is also very, very common among survivors of abuse. So you have people like that where that light bulb goes off, like, oh my God, I'm like, the cognitive dissonance is broken. Like that glass ceiling is broken. They totally get it. They have the clarity they needed. And now they're ready. They're ready to move on. They're ready to, but they're at more of like a stage 6 as far as healing and understanding. They're at a very different place from a person who gets suddenly dumped or discarded by a narcissist out of the clear blue. And then, of course, it's also very different, I think, if a person gets discarded or stumbles across, a double life with a covert narcissist. So different people kind of enter into these stages of healing at different points. So it's just a tricky thing. And hopefully, the more this information gets out there, the more conversation is had, and I'm excited. Frankly, I'm excited about it because I think the more this conversation is had, where mental health professionals are hearing from the survivor perspective of this is what I'm experiencing, and then they're hearing from enough of us because it's the internet, that together we can kind of all work towards healing and understanding and figuring out, okay, what we're doing right now with treating trauma really it could use a lot of improvement. Like it's, and so kind of just brainstorming and thinking like, okay, what is working? Like, let's just throw it all out there and try to get to the bottom of this. Cece was saying I had a therapist who abused me. A lot of people have, that's the thing is they have therapists, especially, I think it's almost like right up there with clergy, that they have this people instantly put their guard down. They assume that they're good people and they assume that they're working in their highest and best interest. But the reality is therapists, like clergy, like the doctors, like anybody, can be abusive. They can be narcissists. They can be highly problematic. So yeah, I mean, I don't know who I was talking to the other day, but we were talking about different realizations with things. And, it was the live stream. Gosh, it was a live stream last night. And I was talking about my, like, just things I didn't think about because my mind just doesn't tend to go there. Like I didn't realize that therapists could be bad guys. Didn't realize that for a long time. I didn't have that on my radar of things to screen for. Didn't realize that there can be highly problematic people in support groups. I had this idea that if you're in a support group, that you're like, one of us, and that you're a survivor of this, and that you have empathy and remorse, and that you're inherently a really good person, and that's not always the case. So it's been a very eye-opening experience this past year for sure, but I think a lot of people have that, or like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that this is a thing. Like, you know, it it kind of just different waves of awareness with all of it. So I'm sorry for you guys that have gone through, abuse with therapists, and feeling re-victimized, and you're not alone. I think that's probably, especially with this kind of stuff, it's probably more the norm than it is the exception, unfortunately, because the information is just really, it's in its infancy, and it has a long way to go. And I think, you know, there's just a lot to be desired. But man, if you can find a good therapist, because they are out there, they are worth their weight in gold. Good therapists are just absolute light workers. I mean, they are just freaking awesome. So ask around. Another therapy, dealing with anxiety that came up is, by the way, now that I'm thinking about it, is EMDR. And we talked about this a few weeks ago. EMDR and EFT therapy. Those are some therapies. Louise Hay touches on a lot of that. Actually, not even touches on. I would say like that's the core of her book. Like it's beyond just touching on it. Her whole book is all about loving yourself and acceptance, and that really is what the core of EMDR and EFT is. There's I don't know if it's pseudoscience or how scientific it really is, but there's different things with EMDR and EFT, with trying to connect the right and left hemisphere of the brain through like tapping, or eye movement, where you watch like a finger, and it's supposed to cross over both halves of your brain. But it works for a lot of people. Frankly, my guess is why it works is because generally after every session, it's about being in the moment, it's about being self-aware, and it's about accepting what is and loving yourself regardless. If you guys have read the book, The How to Heal Your Life, and if you've done those exercises, I would be curious to hear from you. So comment down below if you've read that book and what your experience was. Because I will tell you, for me, when I began going through those exercises, and especially ones having to do with like loving myself and doing affirmations and forgiveness, releasing anger. Because I really am not a fan of that word forgiveness, but I like the concept of releasing anger, which is what the word is supposed to imply, but the word has been so misused. I feel like it's broken. But thinking about releasing anger, I realized when I was doing this exercise, I literally felt like I had a brick in my chest. And I was really surprised as to how that feeling. I did not see that coming at all. So very, very powerful book. Lots of love to you guys. You are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this.